Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Awesome Finds. Today I have a huge stack of records to go through, so let's not waste any more time, and we're going to start with this incredible box set put out by Rhino Records for Record Store Day 2024. This compiles his first 3 albums plus a bonus 4th LP full of rarities and demos. There's also an insert with some nice write-ups. So his debut, Guitars, Cadillacs, etc., etc., is one of my favorite country albums of all time, and there's something about Dwight's sound that I feel is unmatched by anyone else. He's got a very unique singing style, as well as the band backing him are just top-notch players. The sound they create is so classic, so pure, and there's a bit of an edge to it, sort of like a cowboy punk kind of vibe, which makes sense when you think about it because he would often play shows with rockabilly bands and punk bands. He was really kind of breaking the rules back in the 80s, and these first 3 albums are just incredible. If you haven't heard them yet, do yourself a favor, check them out. But if you're a fan, you should really look into picking this box set up. You won't regret it. However you decide to listen to him, definitely check out Dwight Yoakam. It is classic country. Up next, I have the 7th album by FM Skyline, and it's one of my favorite albums of 2024. And this record feeds my soul. The synths, the electric guitars, the saxophone, everything about this album, even the cover art, speaks to me on a spiritual level. I can't even begin to describe how much this record nourishes me to my core. Think of like early 90s PC adventure games or even cheesy corporate VHS instructional videos. That's the kind of mood and feeling this music invokes. He takes these vintage sounds and puts them through a lens of nostalgia and then turns them into something beautiful and emotional and takes them to a place that they never went to back in the day. If you love vaporwave, mall-soft, 80s throwback synth-based music, you are going to love this album. It is so very good. It is out now on 100% electronica, and it's on this very classy white vinyl. Up next, I have the debut album by Wish Queen, and do me a favor and check this out. It is excellent. I love this record. The first time I heard it, I fell in love with it. So Wish Queen is an artist from Cleveland, Ohio, and the music she puts out is a beautiful blend of dream pop, art pop with some indie vibes. Her voice is very ethereal, sometimes haunting with just an edge of longing. There's a lot of emotion and feeling that's being conveyed, not only through her voice, but through the lyrics and the music. It's like floating through a dream. It is very, very cosmic. And it's just one of those albums that I'm so thankful that it exists. I love it that much. This is independently released by Wish Queen, and what's really cool is that she partnered up with Wax Mage to create some amazing vinyl variants. I have the very first pressing here, which is on this marbled pink vinyl, but honestly, some of the more recent pressings are very, very impressive. So however you choose to listen to this album, please do so. It should not be missed. So up next, I have On the North Line by Frontier Ruckus, and I really enjoyed their take on Americana with a folksy pop element to it. Now for me, growing up in the 90s, there were a lot of bands on the fringes of popularity that incorporated banjos in their work, and this band definitely captures that sound with this record, but there's also like this tinge of nostalgia, sort of this sepia tone all over this that gives it a very warm, fuzzy, comfortable feeling. It's relaxing. It takes the stress out of the day when I listen to it. It also reminds me of good times that I've had with friends over the years. It conjures up very happy memories, especially with this cover art that, you know, looks like it's from the late 50s or early 60s. It really does have an American hometown feel about it. This is a double LP featuring 12 songs that are very well produced and written. There's a great flow to the album overall. If you're looking for something to chill out to and set a great vibe, definitely check this out. It is new for 2024.
On the North Line, we're 15 years after the high school.
Up next, I have the Seas with their debut album, Conversations with My Future Self. And this harkens back to the early 80s alternative scene that was just sort of bubbling up. It hadn't quite coalesced into what it became in the 90s. And so it takes those elements, plus I would say some early 2000s emo rock, and blends it all together in a very interesting way. There are some really great guitar hooks on here, as well as some fantastic drum fills. And the songs range from ethereal, slow-building ballad ballad songs to some more straightforward rock and roll songs, and really some good dream pop rock and roll overall. I love the sound they create as a band. It's simple without being over the top, and it's poppy while at the same time staying genuine. This is independently released and new for 2023. I highly recommend checking the C's out.
Like a song that plays a beat.
Up next, I have The House is Burning, the best of Vivabeat, and this is a band that got a record deal because of Peter Gabriel. It's kind of a crazy story, but essentially the keyboardist gave Peter a copy of their demo tape and the rest is history. Ultimately, Vivabeat sort of bounced around in the early 80s. They put out one LP and they had a top 20 hit called Man from China. They sort of scored a second hit with the song The House is Burning, but There's No One Home, which was featured in the film Body Double, but then they sort of disappeared. And I think they really did some amazing work that largely got overshadowed by bigger bands that came later in the 80s, but they put out some really solid work. This compilation album, I think, really helps to rectify that and establish them as an influential techno pop band from the early 80s. This release compiles a lot of their more well-known songs, plus 5 previously unreleased tracks. And track 1 on side 2 has got to be my favorite song out of all of them, and it easily could have been a hit back in the day. So if you're a fan of early 80s techno and synth pop, definitely check this release out. Up next, I have Paris by The Cure, and this is a 30th anniversary reissue put out by Rhino Records. It was originally released in 1993, and this is a phenomenal live album. It sounds fantastic, and The Cure are at the top of their game in my opinion. The song selection is also amazing. I mean, in lieu of a best of, I would say pick this up because you get so many great songs on here, plus you get amazing performances, and there's a little slightly different, which I really like because I've heard some of these songs a million times, but hearing them a little different in a live environment just hits differently. I love it. There's an energy that is captured that you don't get otherwise. On this new reissue, there are 2 bonus tracks. The first song, Shake Dog Shake, plus the ending song, Hot Hot Hot. So for all you Cure fans out there, this is a definite must pick up if you don't already own an original issue. This is a fantastic album. For everyone else, definitely listen to it however you can. Up next, I have Erick The Architect, and he is 1/3 of Flatbush Zombies, and this is his solo debut album, I've Never Been Here Before. What I really love about it is how well crafted it is. The production is very well done, and it takes a less is more approach, which I really appreciate. It's got an overall chill vibe, taking inspiration from multiple genres such as lo-fi, jazz, vintage soul, dance, doo-wop, and linking everything together is Erick's skillful rhymes. His voice has a lot of presence and warmth. It's a true joy to listen to. This record also features some notable guest stars, including George Clinton, Kimbra, Joey Badass, and more. The vinyl edition comes on this very striking white vinyl with custom labels and a printed inner sleeve. This is new for 2024, and I encourage you to check it out.
Lottie, daddy, chill, chill, something kinda ill. I get by for the real.
Up next, I have the 8th studio album by JJ Grey and Mofro, and it is nothing short of incredible. I love this soul-filled album. It sounds like the start of a summer cookout. It reminds me of good times with great friends and just living life. And I feel this recording captures what it means to be a musician and give it your all on a recording. And JJ Grey is one of those artists that I wish I had discovered sooner. I mean, he's been around for over 20 years now, and yet I'm only finding out about him now. Now, this is the black vinyl edition, and it comes in a gatefold jacket with a printed inner sleeve. There are also a couple other vinyl variants out there, but however you choose to listen to this album, you're in for a treat. You are really going to enjoy it.
Now I'm waking up in a wonderland. I said I'm waking up.
So up next, I have this double LP by Jethro Tull. And if you're a fan, you're gonna want this record in your life. This recreates as faithfully as possible their lost 1972 album, and the vinyl edition is new for 2024. So the story goes, in the summer of 72, Jethro Tull were ready to record a follow-up to Thick as a Brick, and for various reasons, they decided to go to a chateau just outside of Paris. This is where Pink Floyd recorded Obscured by Clouds. Elton John and Cat Stevens also recorded there, but unfortunately, the experience was awful. There were technical issues, and staying at the chateau itself was a miserable experience. There were bed bugs, everyone got food poisoning, and the pool was in terrible shape. The band abandoned the project, and some of the songs ended up on later albums, but what's really cool is that for the first time, the double LP has finally been made available on vinyl. And it more or less recreates what they intended to do back then, but it's an imperfect representation because they didn't actually get to finish recording all the songs. So in lieu of this, the last side is full of bonus tracks to round out the double LP. Even if you're not a huge fan of Jethro Tull, I think you're really going to enjoy this. It's a fun listen. Plus, it sounds fantastic. So up next I have this really cool compilation, Live on the Mountain Stage, 40-year anniversary, Outlaws and Outliers. This is an incredible compilation spanning 30 years of the Live on the Mountain Stage radio program, and it's really worth checking out. Some of the featured artists include Wilco, Lucinda Williams, Eric Church, Margot Price, Indigo Girls, John Prine, Alison Krauss, and many, many more. There is a lot of variety on this album, but I would say the general theme is Americana and country music. Overall, the recordings sound fantastic, especially with them all being recorded live. It's honestly hard to pick a favorite track on here, but Wilco doing a cover of David Bowie's Space Oddity is just fantastic. This is out now on Oh Boy Records. This particular release is a double LP on colored vinyl. The gatefold jacket features tip-on sleeve printing. It's also available on all the streaming services as well as CD, but however you choose, you should really check this one out.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
Up next, I have Alex Hall with Side Effects of the Heart. So if you like soul-filled country music with heart, then pay attention to Alex Hall. This is his debut album released in 2023 on Monument Records. This is a first-class record in production and songwriting. Alex is an immense talent with a gorgeous voice, reminiscent of the heyday of 70s country acts. The album is done in a style of country music that just scratches an itch for me. This is the kind of country music that I love. It's not over the top, it's not playing into the lifestyle, but it's about people and emotions. It's about living life, and it's through an American lens, and it speaks the truth. It's honest, and it's incredibly catchy. This whole album is such a joy to listen to. Her to Hear is probably my favorite song on this. His vocalization, the lyrics, the chord changes are just impeccable. I recommend checking this one out. It's available on vinyl as well as streaming.
How the hell did I get from her to here?
Now, some of you longtime viewers will recognize Tod and the Rankoutsiders. This is their latest album, and this really makes me feel like I'm in the best hole-in-the-wall dive bar listening to some amazing live music. And it's always great to see an artist continue to hone their sound and improve, and with this latest album, it is no exception. I really enjoyed their blend of hard rock, country, blues, and a little bit of folky Americana. And cutting through it all is Pat's raspy voice that really conveys a lot of life lived and experience gained. If you enjoy hard-hitting rock and roll, then this album will be right up your alley. I had the pleasure of interviewing Pat a number of years ago, and he is as genuine as they come. Check out that interview, but at the very least, give this record a spin. It is out now on Hound God Records.
That's the reason that I slang out.
Up next, I have Tracks from the Attic by David J. And if you're a fan of Bauhaus or Love and Rockets, then you should really pay attention to this new release. So David J, is the co-founder of both of those bands, and this is a 3 LP compilation of his cassette demos spanning the years 1984 to 2004. And it's a personal and intimate look into the way he writes songs. And what's amazing is that the album is very consistent. You'd never know that the songs were recorded over a 20-year span. Also, pretty much all of these tracks were never turned into singles or became songs for other bands. They're basically all previously unreleased until now. So if you like stripped down acoustic guitar, singer-songwriter type music, you'll really dig this album. It's like a personal open mic night. This is put out by Independent Project Records. They do some stellar releases with some very deep cuts, but their attention to detail is second to none. This is pressed on brownish gold colored vinyl, and it comes in a unique letterpress cover. It also includes all of the songs on 3 CDs. So however you choose to check out this album, I highly encourage you to do so. It is a very special record that should not be missed.
Each of these songs is a page from a diary that he wants to share with you.
So up next, I have this double record compilation by Woo. So if you don't know who they are a prolific brother duo that have been making music since the late 70s, and they're seen as pioneers in the electronic music scene. And they've mostly been experimental in their approach, so they never quite reached super popular status, but that hasn't stopped them from making incredible music. And this release is a collection of 2 albums, Xylophonics and Robot X. These originally came out in 2007 and 2016. But this is a 2024 reissue put together by Independent Project Records, and the music on here is just incredible. I love the sound of these. Xylophonics was born out of taking samples of various recordings they made in the 90s and then compiling them together 20 years later. So they have this sort of PC MIDI soundscape, which I really like. Robot X did something similar, but they took tape recordings done back in the 80s, compiled those with the idea that robots were going to be used everywhere in the future, but they would be poorly maintained. So it's sort of this dystopian yet comic look at the future. So if you like electronic music, vaporwave, synth-based music, then definitely check out Woo and this compilation. It's available on vinyl as well as CD, and of course you can stream it everywhere. All right, moving right along, we have Torn Boys 1983. And Torn Boys were a post-punk group that only lasted a year, from 82 to 83, and some of the members would go on to form Shiva Burlesque and Grant Lee Buffalo, both of which I covered on the channel before. But apart from a couple of these live tracks, most of the songs on here went unreleased until this compilation. And what I really like about this album is that it has this sort of early 80s new wave sound inspired by the desert. It's almost like you're up late at night and you're able to tune into a distant radio station that's just broadcasting the most interesting music you've ever heard. The songs sound mysterious, like a little foreboding, but not necessarily evil, just more like the sense that it's nighttime, like you're driving down a single lane highway in the desert and your car headlights are the only thing illuminating the landscape. Anyway, so this is a really cool album to listen to, and I'm thankful that Independent Project Records is putting this out now. I highly encourage you to check it out. It's available on a couple different vinyl variants as well as CD, and of course, you can stream it anywhere. And last up from Independent Project Records, I have the Ophelias with Bear Bodkin. So the Ophelias were one of those bands that never really got the credit they deserved, and I feel like they were cut short when their record label Rough Trade went bankrupt in 1990. Also prior to this, their guitarist left and joined Camper Van Beethoven before moving on to Counting Crows. But this band is really interesting. I feel like had their luck been more in their favor, they would have been really well remembered today. They were part of the San Francisco music scene during the mid to late 80s, and they were really exploring what neo-psychedelic music could be at that time, taking elements from the 60s, but then infusing it with crunchier, heavier guitars and more thunderous drums. This particular compilation aims to sort of shine a light on this band that has been sort of lost to time, and I think it really does this band justice. It's a double LP that has been cut at 45 RPM, and it comes in this really nice packaging with a small insert that gives you more insight into the band's rise and fall. This is the black vinyl edition, but there's also a translucent blue variant available, but however you choose to listen to it, I think you're really gonna dig it. All right, so up next, I have 5 releases by International Anthem Recording Company. They are out of Chicago, and I really love what they put out. So first up, we have Cassie Kinoshi with Seed, and this is basically one song. It's called Gratitude. It does have a second song on the second side. But what are you going to describe this latest release by Cassie Kinoshi and Seed? Ultimately, this is a brilliant entry into the contemporary jazz scene. There's something so effortless, so flowing about the compositions on this. It has this incredible live sound about it. It's just full of energy and excitement. It really feels like I'm in the room with these musicians and are all just vibing together. I love how the music swells with intensity and then recedes. It really feels flawless to me, and I love that when I listen to this album, I get feelings of hope, love, and creativity. It was beautifully performed by many of the top musicians in the UK, including members of the London Contemporary Orchestra. This is the standard vinyl edition, but also available on CD and of course streaming. I highly encourage you to check it out. I think you're really gonna dig it. So up next, I have New Future City Radio by Damon and Rob Mazurek. And they explore what the future could look like through the concept of a pirate radio station. And the result is a really creative, interesting album that demands your attention. This is not a record you just want to put on in the background. No, this is an event. When you listen to this, you want to sit down and really be open to what they're expressing, both through music and through samples and lyrics. This reminds me a lot of the free jazz that was coming out during the 70s, but this is done through a digital lens. So you have traditional instruments like trumpets and flutes, but then you also have synthesizers and samplers, and the result is just a really, really cool listen. It's one of those records that you never know what the next track is gonna be or sound like, and yet it all has this really cohesive connective tissue running through it all. The album cover does a great job of expressing the vibe and the feeling of this album. It definitely has some teeth. It's on the darker side, and it's a little grainy. It's not super slick and clean sounding. It's available on black vinyl as well as a really cool gradient vinyl color, and of course you can check it out on all the streaming platforms, and I really hope you do because you won't regret it. Moving right along, we have the latest release by Daniel Villarreal. So this is a 2023 album and it is incredible. I was instantly hooked the moment I played the first track, and with each subsequent song I just fell more and more in love with it. This is called Lados B, and it features Jeff Parker on guitar and Anna Butters on bass, along with Daniel's drumming and percussion. What I really like about this album is the blend of Latin music with a jazz-inspired instrumental chill vibe, and a strong emphasis on drum and bass, which makes a lot of sense since Daniel is a well-known DJ in the Chicago area. What I also really like about this is the use of an acoustic bass or double bass on some of the songs. It just lends a warmer, mellow kind of organic tone to the songs. Nothing against electric bass, I love that too, but I just find that it's more unusual to hear an acoustic bass paired with an electric guitar tone, but I love that combo. This is out now at International Anthem Recording Company. It's available on black vinyl, which I have here, but there's also a really cool Clear Smoke limited edition, as well as a CD, digital download, and streaming. So check it out. I think you're really gonna dig it. Moving right along, we have Ruth Goller, and it is a deeply personal sonic adventure. I mean, this is Ruth expressing who she is through the bass, and it is unlike anything I've ever heard before. It's a really cool experience to listen to this. And there is a lot going on here. Even though I've listened to this multiple times, I still don't feel like I've heard everything on this record. And the structure of the songs is very loose. I would say it's closer to a soundtrack as they tend to kind of flow into each other. It all feels very much like a singular statement through music. There are lyrics on here, but I feel like they add texture more than they add any context to the record, if that makes any sense. One of the things I really enjoy about Ruth's playing is the use of harmonics on her bass. It's a technique where you just lightly touch the string as you pluck it, and it creates a really cool tone. So if you're looking for something meditative and ethereal, something that will invite you to stay present while listening, definitely check this album out. All right, last up from International Anthem Recording Company, I have The Closest Thing to Silence. And this record was born out of a really cool idea. So there's this radio show on BBC Three called Late Junction. And what it does is pairs two or more musicians who have never met each other before and gets them to collaborate to create essentially 20 minutes of music. And so this album came out of that pairing. And so you have this French composer, Ariel, plus you have Jeremiah and Sofia, and they went back and forth creating music. And I'm not really sure if they actually recorded together in one room, but what they made is incredible. It blends electronic music elements with jazz improvisation, tape loop techniques, and samples dating back all the way to the 70s that Ariel recorded himself. And it's this wonderful sonic expression of all of these artists that is honestly indescribable and endlessly enthralling to listen to. I really enjoyed all the textures of this, and I love the sounds that they created. It's nothing else I've ever heard before. It definitely leans more on the experimental side versus the more traditional songwriting style, but if you give this record a chance, I think it's really going to sink into you. You're really going to enjoy it. And I highly encourage you to check this out. This is the black vinyl edition, but it's also available on this really cool smoke gray vinyl variant as well as CD. And of course, it's available on all the streaming platforms, so you have no excuse. You need to listen to this record. So up next, I have two releases from the Rhino High Fidelity line, and this first one is Devo's Freedom of Choice, originally released in 1980. And this has got to be one of my favorite Devo albums because it has some of my favorite songs by them, including Girl You Want and Gates of Steel. And of course, it has the huge hit Whip It, but the album as a whole is fantastic, and this pressing sounds glorious. Kevin Gray really did a fantastic job with this release. And just like all the other Rhino High Fidelity releases, this comes in a gatefold jacket with tip-on sleeve printing. It also includes an insert featuring a nice write-up by the engineer of the album, giving some context about the recording. I also really like how they show the original tape image. It just shows that this is made by people who love audio, and the fact that they included a reprint of the Devo catalog insert on heavyweight cardstock is a very nice touch. However, I recommend that you don't actually fill that order out because they're never going to see your items. But it's just a cool thing to have, especially if you're like me and you have an original pressing that came with that. That thing's on very thin paper, but it's just really cool, that attention to detail that you put into this. Yeah, if you're looking for a copy, definitely check this one out, but at the very least, listen to this album. It is fantastic. And last up, we have the debut album by Black Sabbath. This is their self-titled release from 1970. This was remastered by Kevin Gray, and it is fantastic. This should not be missed. I know it's not as iconic as their follow-up, Paranoid, but this record really put them on the map. In my opinion, there are just some fantastic songs on here, and it's incredible music for 1970. I mean, these guys were ahead of their time, and no wonder they became legends. The presentation of this particular version definitely beats out my original pressing, as it comes on heavyweight cardstock, tip-on sleeve printing, and a gatefold jacket. It also includes an insert featuring commentary by the original engineer. If you can get your hands on this edition, you won't be disappointed, but at the very least, listen to this album because it is phenomenal. Alright everybody, that'll do it for today. Be sure to let me know which of these were your favorite. Are you going to pick up any of these releases? Let me know with a comment down below. Until then, I want to thank you all so much for watching, but I especially want to thank my members over on Patreon. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.